I come from the province of Capiz and was a child when this bizarre event happened. It was something that has left me scarred for life. Kuya Pablo was my cousin and best friend. We were as close as brother and sister. We also lived very close to each other. I liked my Tita Maria as well. She was gentle and kind and practically the kind of mom any child could ask for. She was also very close with my mom. I always enjoyed going to their house. They were always so welcoming and treated me like a daughter. However, they were having financial problems ever since Tito Carlos stopped working as a farmhand and had gone back to finish his training to become a police officer. And Tita Maria, unfortunately, wasn't earning much in their little business. So she sought my mom's advice, and after careful consideration, she decided to work as an OFW. She applied at a job placement agency and got a job as a caregiver for an old man and his wife in a foreign country. One night, we were all having dinner. Are you sure about this? You know, being a caregiver isn't all that it's cut out to be. I'm sure I can handle all that. I did take care of Lola in the hospital, and I'm pretty sure I did a good job. You're not scared at all by those stories about employers mistreating their employees? At the time, there were many stories about overseas workers being mistreated or abused by their employers. The majority of them were stories from female workers who claimed to have been raped, abused, or tortured. But Tita Maria assured everyone that she was going to be all right. She then asked us to look over Tito Carlos and Pablo for her, to which we happily obliged. The day came for Tita Maria's flight. She kissed all of us on the cheek before waving goodbye and boarding. Pablo was really sad when his mom went away, but I did my best to keep him company and distract him. Once a week, we would talk to Tita Maria on the phone. It was our only means of communicating with her. She would often tell us about her employers and how they simply adored her. She talked about her daily routine of waking up, preparing breakfast, and gently helping the old man sit up and give him his medicine. It's like taking care of Pablo. That gave us all relief. At least she was being treated well. She would also tell us about the strange habits and practices of her employers, like how they refused to eat fish on Fridays, and they insisted on food that wasn't seasoned with salt or garlic. And sometimes, they let me eat the same meal as them, like raw liver. Raw liver? They said it's an old family delicacy. It was strange at first, but eventually I got used to it. That's strange. But she assured us that she was perfectly fine. Sometimes I felt like I didn't give her enough credit when it came to adjusting. We changed the subject and talked about how Tito Carlos had just graduated and was applying at the Roxa City Police. It seemed to motivate Tita Maria to work even harder. She would always end the call saying she looks forward to going home and seeing her family. Then one day, while I was with Pablo, I learned that Tita Maria's employer had passed away and that she herself had gotten sick. She didn't want to stay abroad, so she had somehow managed to persuade the Philippine embassy to send her back home. We drove to the airport to meet her when she arrived. I was stunned to see that she was quite thin. Her clothes hung off her shoulders, and her cheeks looked hollow and sunken in. I wondered if her employers were really treating her well. We immediately took her back home and spent the next few days nursing her back to health. We weren't so sure what her illness was, but in a matter of days, she miraculously got better. Save for her appetite, she didn't like eating any of her usual favorites like sinigang or escabeche. Oddly enough, the only thing she seemed to still enjoy was dinuguan. One day, Tita Maria told us that she wanted to cook a special dinner as a thank you for nursing her back to health. On that night, we sat around the table to a delicious meal of adobo, rice, and grilled pork. Tito Carlos started to take in the meal while Tita Maria stayed inside the kitchen, her back facing us. Maria, this is so good. Did you learn this while abroad? Yes. I took a spoonful of adobo. It was really, really delicious. Tita, why aren't you eating? She didn't reply. I then noticed how she calmly started cooking again. There was an odd air of uneasiness in the room, like something was missing. Maria, where is Pablo? He was right. I hadn't seen Pablo all day. Where was he? Yes, Tita, where is Pablo? Is he at a friend's house? No, he's here. Oh, he's upstairs. I'll go get him. No need, he's already here. I didn't see him at all. Then I saw Tita Maria slowly turn around. Her eyes looked bloodshot. Her skin had turned somewhat pale. She walked over to the refrigerator and slowly opened it. What she said next is something I can never forget. "Carlos, our son, is here," she said as she opened the refrigerator door. We all looked, and to our horror, we saw the severed head of Pablo staring back at us. "Doesn't he taste perfect?" We stared at the meat on our plates, and we realized what we had just eaten. Horrified, I began to cough up and spat what I had just eaten, while Tito Carlos got up, and in a fit of disbelief, he began to confront Tita Maria. I heard a loud growl coming from Tita Maria. I looked up and saw that her eyes had gone white. Her mouth had widened into a wide grin that stretched from ear to ear, and her teeth had grown sharp. She crouched on top of the kitchen counter and snarled, then quickly shifted her gaze to me with her sharp teeth exposed. Before we could say anything, Tita Maria lunged forward, but Tito Carlos stopped her from attacking me. Instead, she struck Carlos across his chest with her long, sharp claws. She then turned her attention to me and was about to attack when my mom grabbed her from behind and wrestled her down to the ground. Tito Carlos grabbed a kitchen knife and slashed Maria across her face. Tita Maria leaped out of the window and into the night. Tito Carlos slumped to the ground and began to weep in agony as he heard neighbors entering the house. When they looked inside the refrigerator and saw blood all over him and the floor, they quickly assumed that Tito Carlos had gone mad and murdered his entire family. I quickly rushed to his defense and told them that it was Maria and that she had somehow become a terrifying creature. The men began to go on a massive hunt for Maria, with Carlos leading the search, while the women boarded up the doors and kept their children close in hopes that they would keep them safe from the monstrous Maria. The following days were met with neighbors gossiping about what could have caused Maria's monstrous side. The most outlandish and somewhat believable rumor was that Maria must have been transformed by a blood-sucking monster disguised as her employer, which would explain why she was fed raw liver. In time, her story had spread across the province, and she was given a new nickname, Maria Labo, the slashing woman who prowls the night looking for humans to eat with her horrifying slash face and insatiable appetite. I found it ironic that out of all the days of the year, my heart decided to reach its weakest point right before Valentine's Day. I spent most of my life suffering from cardiomyopathy, which is a disease that leads to heart failure because a muscle becomes so weak to the point where it can no longer pump blood to the rest of the body. I was just laying in bed one night when I suddenly had heart palpitations and had to be rushed to the emergency room. It didn't help that my boyfriend of 5 years and I broke up just a month before, which possibly contributed to added stress. I was immediately put on a wait list for a heart transplant because of the urgency of my deteriorating health. Apparently, I was lucky because I was matched rather quickly. The hospital was able to recover a heart from a deceased donor who was from the area. A Valentine's Day spent having open heart surgery and being single. Yep, Cupid certainly avoided me that year. My heart was as broken as could be. I laid on the hospital bed awaiting surgery. My surgeon went through all the logistics, and I made the decision to not know who my donor was. Maybe in the future, but I wanted everything to remain confidential. It was morbid to think about, how a dead stranger's heart would be put into my chest. After about 6 hours, I woke up in the ICU. The transplant was a success. I spent the next few months recovering. I felt like a brand new person. Aside from the occasional soreness and lethargy, everything was perfect. Life went back to normal. I resumed working at the office and everyone was excited to see me again. One day, I was in the break room making myself a cup of coffee. And suddenly, warning, this is going to sound cringy, but my life changed. The most attractive human being I'd ever laid eyes on entered the room. I was speechless. The attraction was instant. It felt like a movie. I've never been the type to be into soulmates, but when we locked eyes, my heart immediately fluttered. It scared me for a moment, and I had to grab my chest because I thought the palpitations came back. He asked me if everything was okay and looked concerned. Yeah, sorry. This is like my third cup of coffee this morning. I should probably lay off the caffeine. We chuckled and joked around for a bit. We introduced ourselves. His name was Jake. I had never connected with someone so fast, but we ended up making plans to get lunch. He had just joined the company and wanted to make at least one new friend. Well, long story short, we hit it off and started dating, and yeah, everything was perfect. I hadn't told him about my heart transplant though. I guess it was because at some point he would see my incision, and the thought of that made me feel really insecure. But the time came after months of being together, and I warned him beforehand. He assured me that it was not a big deal, and that it wouldn't make me any less attractive. It's a part of you, and I'll accept every inch of you, flaws and all. After that night, I opened up to Jake about my heart complications. I told him that I was thinking about writing a letter to my donor's family to thank them. He was very supportive of my decision and encouraged me to call the hospital. I managed to find their contact information because they told the hospital that they wanted to get in touch with me. Jake would leave me alone in the evenings while I gathered my thoughts and jotted them down on paper. I was planning on mailing it over the weekend. That night, I got in bed as usual, kissed Jake goodnight, and fell asleep. I don't recall everything that happened that night, but it was terrifying. When I was younger, I would experience sleep paralysis on occasion, and also have nights where I would sleepwalk, but never one after the other. But apparently some nights, I would talk in my sleep and would scare Jake because he would think I was awake, but I was really unconscious. He thought it was cute though because I'd usually talk about how much I adored him. At this point, I don't know if I need more medical attention or to be exercised. But that night was the first and only night I ever experienced multiple forms of parasomnia. It was a sequence of one terrifying event after the other. First, I woke up from night terrors. My heart was racing and I was crying. When I turned around to face Jake, there was a woman I had never seen before in between us. I was forgotten. I won't be forgotten anymore. I started screaming and crying in my sleep, and Jake woke me up. He hugged me tight, and I fell asleep again. And then she visited again. It's mine. He's mine. I started asking who she was, but she wouldn't answer my questions. I'll show you. She touched my chest, and immediately my heart started palpitating. Jake started shaking me in my sleep, and I heard his voice telling me to wake up. I took one final glance at the woman. I recognized that look. She was heartbroken. When I opened my eyes, I was in front of a gravestone. Jake stood in front of me, shaking and terrified. What? Why are we here? You were sleepwalking. I decided not to wake you up and follow you. I looked at the gravestone. It was not a name I was familiar with. But then, I remembered the last name. Let's get out of here. On the way back to his place, Jake was really quiet. I kept asking what happened and who Catherine was, but he wouldn't answer. Did I just screw up this relationship? I couldn't help but cry. As soon as we entered the house, he told me to sit down. So, you don't know who Catherine is? No. I'm so sorry. I don't know how I ended up there. And you don't remember anything you said to me? No. Can you please tell me what's wrong? Can I see the letter you wrote? I handed it to him. Jake looked like he was going to faint. Wow. He sat down and told me everything. That Catherine was his ex, who was really controlling and easily jealous. After the breakup, she stalked him to the point where he had to get a restraining order. Apparently, before I woke up in the cemetery, I said, "Jake, I'll always be with you." He had no idea she had passed away. We were both speechless for a while. So, where does that leave us? Are you going to break up with me? What? That's absurd. I love you for you. Let's get some rest. I'll admit that it's freaky having his ex-stalker's heart inside of me. I do question if our relationship is genuine at times. I've heard that cellular memory is a thing. But my feelings for Jake are real. I just know it. And I know he feels the same way. Can you blame me? I'm only listening to my heart. I decided to study abroad during my sophomore year of college. I was so ecstatic when I found out I could spend a semester in South Korea. As a Korean American, it was the perfect way for me to connect with my roots, but nothing could have prepared me for what would follow. I wasn't fluent in the language, but thankfully could get by. I faced a lot of culture shock when I was there, and for the majority of my visit, hardly made any acquaintances. I definitely felt like an outsider most of the time, and the only topics I could really talk about with people my age were K-drama, K-pop, and food. It was Valentine's Day, and I thought I would have had a boyfriend by now. But nope. I was as single as ever and spent it studying in the library. Not that there was anything wrong with that. The library was my safe place, and who knows, maybe someone special would be right behind a bookshelf. I've always been a bookworm, and I also thought this would be the perfect time to catch up on my romance novels. I was also relieved to see that I wasn't the only one spending their Valentine's Day at the school library. I was almost finished with my book when I looked up. I turned off my music. I was all alone. How sad. Where did everybody go? Of course this would happen to me. This was the worst Valentine's Day ever. No one to give chocolates to, which meant I had no one for White Day next month. The day where guys shower their girlfriends with affection in response to being gifted on Valentine's Day. If only life were like one of the books I was reading. But then, suddenly, I heard a voice. Okay, I wasn't all alone. But I started to feel anxious, so I packed up my stuff and headed out. It was really eerie. I had to distract myself. So I thought about all the snacks I'd pick up at 7-Eleven on my way back home. I just wanted to be back in bed, binge-watching shows. But then, I saw her. She looked so creepy. At first, I thought her back was facing towards me, but then realized that her long black hair covered her face, and she was wearing a white hanbok. I approached her with caution. Why did she look like that? Maybe she was lost. I didn't want to be quick to judge. Are you okay? When she heard my voice, she immediately disappeared. Maybe she was a figment of my imagination. I hadn't been sleeping well after all, and hadn't eaten all day. I needed to get out of there. When I exited my school, I was shocked to see that the streets were empty. No students, no pedestrians, not even a single vehicle. Maybe I didn't get the memo and wasn't invited to an event. I started to feel sorry for myself again. I looked down, and miraculously saw someone's shadow on the ground. I looked up, but no one was there. I looked down in shame. The shadow was still there. I looked up again, and the woman from earlier was in front of me. She wasn't there just a second ago. She was walking. No, wait. Floating so slowly. I was right behind her, but she didn't notice me. I debated whether I should run, cross the street, or act nonchalant and walk past her. I knew I should avoid her as much as possible. I had no idea who she was or what her intentions were. I didn't feel safe. But then she stopped moving and slowly turned around. I froze in horror as I caught sight of her face. Underneath her hair, she was pale, with dark circles and blood dripping down from the side of her mouth. She moved closer to me, staring right into my eyes. I couldn't move a muscle. She looked like a corpse. I didn't want to admit to myself that she wasn't alive. She said something that I couldn't quite understand. I didn't know how to respond to that. I think she was asking for directions, so I pointed straight ahead. She turned back around. Slowly, she hovered away. Thank goodness. I had to get out of there. I decided to skip 7-Eleven and run straight home. There still wasn't a single living person in sight. It was anyone's worst nightmare. Perhaps I fell asleep in the library and was now dreaming. But then, I heard the woman scream from afar. In a few seconds, she was right in front of me again, and I saw her moving towards me at an impossible speed. She grabbed my arm. Everything felt hazy after that. Maybe I had fainted. When I opened my eyes again, I was in my room, on my bed. Apparently, I was discovered by 2 of my classmates in front of my building. They carried me back to my room. I had to tell them everything. It came to my knowledge that she was part of an old Korean legend. She is what they call a virgin ghost, or Jeonyo Kishin. They explained that decades ago, she was a young woman who went to the same school as us. She was engaged to the love of her life after meeting him in class. She unfortunately died nights before her wedding, a virgin, and that bitterness and shame of not marrying has caused her soul to wander around in anger. She wasn't able to fulfill what society told her was her life's purpose, to serve her husband and bear children. Her hair was down because only married women were allowed to have their hair up. This angered me. Over the years, there had been numerous sightings, and she would always ask the same question. To lighten the mood, one of my classmates jokingly chuckled. "It's a good thing you're not single." Flustered, I asked why. He said that there were incidents of the ghost hurting women or men who were in happy relationships, sometimes slashing their faces or pushing them to ongoing traffic. If she came across a newlywed couple, well, that would be really unfortunate for them, because she would curse their relationship. Apparently, the only way to get rid of her is to have a shaman perform an exorcism, or a ritual called a soul wedding, where a virgin ghost marries a bachelor ghost. For a moment, I laughed about it. What are the odds that me being single prevented me from getting hurt or cursed? I can't decide on whether or not it's better to find a boyfriend or remain single. So much for finding my oppa. The farm life has never really been for me. It's too quiet, smells like crap most of the time, and there's always something that needs to be fixed or cleaned. Following graduation, I wanted to move to a city and start my career, but life had other plans for me when the family farm was struggling. Well, following a traumatizing event which resulted in my dad's injury, I decided to stay for a while to help him recover from multiple losses. I came back in September. In other words, hurricane season here in Florida. I was a bit moody since, once again, I had to put my dreams on hold, but I held my tongue. This was only temporary. One night, I woke up to the sounds of the cows and chickens causing a ruckus. We had prepared the animals for the storm by securing their shelter and taking all necessary precautions, so they were probably fine. The next morning, I woke up to the sun shining on my face. The calm after the storm. I headed outside and started my first set of morning chores, feeding the animals and cleaning up their mess. I was feeding the chickens when I realized some of them weren't inside their coop. It was odd. Maybe my dad brought some of them into the house last night. I checked on the pigs and sheep next, and saw that some of them were missing as well. I went to my dad, who was busy fixing up the barn due to the damage from the storm. When he came down his ladder, he noticed blood and the remains of cattle on the ground.
What in tarnation?
We ran around the farm, looking for the missing animals. I spotted a chicken hiding. I picked it up. Poor fella was trembling. How'd you get over here? I was walking back to the chicken coops when it started clucking nonstop. What's wrong? I looked ahead and noticed something peeking out of our pond. I screamed and scared the chicken, which immediately jumped out of my arms. Suddenly, an alligator stepped out of the water. I noticed that it was injured. Its ribs were sticking out, and it looked like it had one hell of a night. It quickly moved towards the chicken that was running in circles and ate it in one bite. I ran back towards the barn and tried to find my dad. Pa, there's an injured alligator in the pond, and it's been eating the chickens.
An alligator, you say? No problem, hun. We used to eat those pests back in the bayou.
He went near the pond and saw the alligator feasting on another one of our animals.
Oh, think you're Mr. Tough Guy. Wait till I batter you up in some Cajun spices. See if you like being eaten.
He jumped in his tractor with his shooting gun and drove closer to it.
But not today, Satan. Into the deep fryer you go. You mess with the wrong Papa Bear.
He looked over at me and yelled for me to call the nuisance alligator hotline so that they could come and get rid of the damn thing.
Ask for Hank, best damn trapper in town, and the bastard owes me one.
He managed to grab the alligator with his tractor. It was the biggest creature I had ever seen, being over 10 feet long. When he tried to pull the thing up, the tractor broke.
Oh, dagnabbit, this wasn't cheap, you know.
That's when I ran inside the house to call the hotline, telling them to hurry up. Worried for my dad's life, I ran back outside. The tractor was broken, completely smashed. My dad was still inside, but no sight of the alligator. I looked around. The alligator went into the barn. I ran to my dad. His eyes were closed. I managed to pull him out. Dad.
Goodness gracious. Man, I thought I was a goner. Never seen anything like that.
He was badly injured. Eventually, I lifted him up, and we went back inside the house. Meanwhile, in the background, we heard the screams and cries of our animals.
No, not my babies.
The trappers arrived a few minutes later, and we pointed them towards the direction of the creature. The team ran into the barn, armed and carrying gear. These guys are licensed alligator trappers who then sell the beasts to farms where they are killed for their meat and hide. They know their shit. Is everything okay? Fuck, it chomped down on one of our guys. I called for backup. It's injured right now. I got it real good. What the heck is that thing?
Well, damn, I'll be. Sure enough got the Hulk over here.
I'm out of here. Right then and there, a helicopter came flying out of nowhere and landed in the farm. One after the other. I looked over, and the creature went back inside the barn. One of the guys approached my dad and me and explained who they were.
SCP Foundation? Nope, never heard of it. What are you, a secret government agency or something? I don't trust y'all. I reckon that over yonder's your failed experiment.
They told us not to worry, that they'll have everything under control. Said something about the creature being a number 682 or something like that, and that it was really dangerous. I told them that the creature went inside the barn. A team of personnel stormed inside with some kind of transport container filled with acid. What left me speechless was hearing a conversation between the team and the creature.
Why did you escape? You've disrupted and killed so many innocent lives. You have no business being here. Not going to talk? Okay, I hope you enjoy containment. What was that? Speak up.
They were too alive. They did not deserve to roam free.
Well, neither do you.
Thank goodness. After a lot of blood, explosives, and shots fired, they managed to injure and contain the creature.